Hi everyone, this is Suki, and I thought I'd say a few words in the great outdoors before I start my slides. And you guys are all probably sitting at your computers, stuck inside with Zoom again. It's sort of the theme of our year, isn't it? That we have this conference that's indoors, that we don't get to spend time together physically. But on the other hand, if this conference had been, say, on the East Coast, I probably wouldn't be there. And if it was in California, maybe you wouldn't be here. So we're together. And the theme of my talk is meeting children where they are. And so I wanted to start outdoors because as I record this, it's almost summer. And as you're watching, summer has started. And summer is about all those summer things that sometimes we parents forget. It's about freedom, it's about lack of schedules, it's about being outdoors. And obviously, we all have our various issues that we have to deal with, our restrictions. So you might need to work, you might not have the funds to go anywhere, but no matter where we start, if we're meeting our kids where we are as a family, we can keep in mind that this is summer. And we don't have to worry about our kids being behind. We don't have to worry about whether someone else's kid is going to, you know, space physics camp and we can't afford that. We just need to relax and enjoy our summers. So that's where I'm starting my talk. Now on to the slides.
Learning starts at home. We all know this intrinsically, but what we know and what we act on are two completely different things, at least for me. Over and over, I find myself walking through life not actually acting on the wisdom that I have. Our wisdom is gathered from our families and our friends, from our own experiences, from what we've read, discussed, and heard. We've got tons of it built up in there, from look both ways before you cross a street to stand up for what you believe in. What's in our brains doesn't always make it to our feet, hands, and mouth. For a lot of our lives, we're on autopilot. We cross a street and we're sure that we looked both ways. Well, probably. Do we actually remember looking for cars? What about that time we were steamed about something that our spouse said or our child did, and our body just angrily stepped off that curb and, well, thank goodness we also have built-in reflexes. And it's in those moments that we realize that we were on autopilot and we have to start paying attention again. There's just so much stuff involved with being a parent. For most of us, becoming parents was easy, and for some, actually getting to having a baby in the house was complex. But getting a baby in the house wasn't the end of it. The complexity of parenting even starts from the conception. Don't eat that. It's not good for the baby. Eat that. It's great for the baby. No, we can't choose that name. I know a guy with that name who really creeps me out. Crib, co-sleeper, or family bed. Mom, no, you can't stay at our house to help us for 6 months. You'd drive my spouse insane. Mom, please, can you come stay and help out? I'm going insane. And that's just the first 2 weeks of parenthood. Our brains are full of details. And let's be frank about it. Focusing on the details can help us from facing the bigger questions. Once there's a child in the house, it can almost be soothing to focus on details like shopping for equipment, finding the best baby food recipes, or researching preschools. Focusing on those details can be a relief because those are concrete, specific tasks that have a beginning, middle, and end. But parenting starts way back in our family's history and continues well past we are gone. The wisdom it takes to do well is huge, overwhelming, and sometimes feels like the hardest, most important test it's impossible to study for. But then we get the kid and they are different from what we expected, or maybe they seem exactly what we expected, but then they start to surprise us, or suddenly we realize that our relationship with our spouse or the child's other parent or parents is different than we expected, or we realize that we need a type of support that we didn't anticipate. we are filled with many questions. And the answer is meet every child where they are. Remember all that planning we did before we had a child in the house? Or all that planning we did when we decided to homeschool? Or all that planning you're doing right now as you multitask while I talk because you realize that you hadn't made an appointment that you needed to make? All that planning is necessary and good in its own way, but planning alone will never suffice. I have to admit we weren't terribly surprised by our first child. He was a hypersensitive, got that from mom, little professor type, dad all the way. He loved computers, dad, and cooking, mom. He could be willful and difficult, especially once he had a sibling. But he generally went along with our plan, which was to send him to school and expect him to thrive and succeed. We were in the early stages of looking into adoption when our second one came along. Oops. And that's when I realized we were in a very strange country. And that country was Africa? Well, no, not that Africa, the continent. Africa, the place where Burp and the other babies lived with the Bobbities and worked in the baby space program. Confused? So were we. We liked to say that our first child came from a mixture of both of us, and our second child came from another planet, an alternate universe. Certainly someplace we had never been. We got a crash course in meeting a child where they are. I had taught college English before having children, and suddenly I was drawn into the world of psychology, special education, and pretty much every kind of therapy ever devised. Where our child was a place we didn't understand. Verbally brilliant at home, sullen and unwilling to get with the program at school, physically expressive in a beautiful way at times, physically explosive in a disruptive way at other times. So here are a few things that I learned along the way. Not all professionals meet children where they are. In fact, not all professionals, whether you're talking medicine, education, psychology, or therapy, even bother to look at your child. My advice, if you need professionals to help with your child's development, make sure they look at your child. If they don't, move on. Sometimes we need help from professionals. The earliest advice I got was the best. We had one preschool teacher and one therapist who really looked at our child, who helped us really look at our child and advised us to stay away from people who would put our child in a box and lock it up. Yes, we needed diagnoses, but we didn't need accusation, indictment, trial, and sentencing, which is what it felt like. We had a child, not a number on a chart. I was a reluctant homeschooler. In fact, I used to bill myself as the world's most reluctant homeschooler. My kid and I spent the first month of homeschooling, and I'm saying that with air quotes, yelling at each other. It was yell schooling, and it was not good. I've frequently thought of those days during the pandemic, which is why I have great empathy for those of you homeschooling behaviorally difficult children in this last year. It's hard, and sometimes the world makes it even harder. In the end, I chose to homeschool both of my kids. My original homeschooler chose to return to school once he was able, graduating from public high school and is attending a small private college now. My older child started homeschooling in 6th grade, graduated from homeschool, and is now finishing public university. But just like parenting, your homeschooling starts before you were born. Your ancestors and parents and guardians' choices started the process. Your child's early years planted more seeds for this process. The person you are raising your child with, or the fact that you are raising a child alone, will determine what sort of homeschooling life you will have. As someone who loves to swim in Monterey Bay, I imagine a wave that comes to us from far out, bringing its shape and personality from many factors beyond our control. Then for a short time, we ride that wave and we do our best to nurture balance, understanding, and forgiveness. And then the wave dissipates. We feel it tugging at our ankles. We watch it leave us as it goes back out to sea with just that little bit of us left in it. So here's some practical advice for you. Take it or leave it. First piece of advice. So what does this all mean if you are homeschooling now or if you're in the planning stages? Well, first I'll quote Buckaroo Banzai. Wherever you go, there you are. Please make a commitment to try to reject all the following temptations. Planning a homeschool like someone else's. Being envious of how others homeschool. Apologizing for how your family has chosen to homeschool. Your child's needs and your family's realities will deeply affect how you homeschool. So often I hear parents ask whether there's something wrong with their child. I'll admit that sometimes there really is something wrong, air quotes, with your child. Perhaps your child really does have food allergies or really does have a learning disability or really does need therapy. But usually that question comes from parents who aren't actually asking a clinical question. They're asking, am I doing this right? Shouldn't my child be more like other children? What if I'm missing something? My answer is, look at your child. Who is the person in front of you? What are their needs? And if you don't know what their needs are, how can you find out? While you're busy trying to be the perfect parent and the perfect homeschooler, take a moment to stop. Then stay stopped. You can't be perfect, so don't try. It's harder for miserable parents to raise happy kids than it is for parents who are meeting their own needs to raise happy kids. You may be lucky enough never to have to seek out professional help for your child. But even if you don't need professionals, you do need help. You need a homeschooling community. You need non-homeschooling friends who aren't critical of you. You may need your extended family and may need to help them learn to be supportive even when they don't agree with your choices. And if you need help from professionals, seek it with knowledge and acceptance. No, there's nothing wrong with you as a parent if your kid needs therapy. There's nothing wrong with you as a homeschooler if you need a professional to help teach your child to read. There's nothing wrong with the dietary choices you made if they turn out not to be the most advantageous for your child. Find good, helpful professionals who will really look at your child and work within your vision for the life you want to lead. But before all of that, define success. Success is a really loaded word in our culture. We tend to think that it has something to do with money or status, but really it doesn't. I teach my teen goal-setting students that you can't really have a goal until you know what your definition of success is. Some of them include money and status in their personal definitions of success, but most of them actually don't. When looking at their potential futures, they tend to include markers of success based on their personal values, such as, I want to have lots of time to spend with friends, or I want to be paid to be creative, or I want to be in charge of something important to me. What are your values? What does success mean to you? You can't know if you're being successful as a parent and as a homeschooler unless you start with this knowledge. Wait, how is it I'm telling you to look to the future when I say meet your child where they are now? Well, here's the best piece of advice I can give you as someone whose kids are now in college, who went through a pretty darn harrowing set of years when we thought perhaps one of our kids really wouldn't make it. The best way to figure out what kind of parent and what kind of homeschooler you want to be is to imagine what kind of adult you want out the other end of this process. Once you've met your child where they are, look ahead. Do you want your future adult child to be happy? Well, yeah, most of us do. Do you want your future adult child to be self-supporting? Sure, that sounds great because we really want our guest room back eventually. Do you want your future adult child to have healthy relationships? Of course, and that starts with how we treat them. How about a fulfilling career? We can't force that choice on them, no matter what we think is the best one for them. Perhaps these questions seem to have obvious answers, but how often do you see parents acting in ways that clearly show that they haven't looked ahead? As a teacher of teens, I see it all the time. Well-meaning, very loving parents pressure their children in ways that call into question what they really want. And once your kids are teens, they're going to start to call you out on that. In fact, it's a teenager's apparent role in the family to call out other family members' hypocrisy. But lots of teens are just confused and angry. Their parents' actions don't match their words. That's what I mean by look ahead and see what adult you want out the other end of this. Meet your child where they are, wherever that is. It doesn't matter what age your baby starts to walk, as long as they run or roll joyfully through life. If your 2-year-old has a meltdown in the supermarket, it's not going to keep them from going to college. I promise. It doesn't matter if your 6-year-old can't read yet. They'll just join the club of lots of fantastically smart and creative people who didn't learn to read in that single year of life. If your 10-year-old suddenly loses interest in a subject you approve of and gets obsessed with YouTube hair dyeing videos, join them and enjoy the ride. Also, enjoy the crazy hair colors. When your sweet and easygoing 12-year-old turns into a sullen and angry 13-year-old, remain patient, open, and non-judgmental. They'll come back to you. If your 15-year-old fails a math class, you're there to support the kid you've got, not wish they'd studied and excelled like some other kid. When your 17-year-old seems completely unprepared to apply to college, find out what they want, where they want to go, what they want to do, and support them to reach that goal no matter what it is. And when your young adult returns home and really looks at you, really wants to hear what you've been up to, and comes back to you for advice, camaraderie, or solace, well then, you've met that child where they are, and now they're returning the favor. Enjoy the high-stakes ride of parenting and homeschooling. It's different every time, but never boring and never without surprises and prizes along the way. Please visit my website for more information about my writing, my books, and my courses for children, teens, and adults. That's www.sukiwessling.com. I want to thank GHF for inviting me to speak to you and for putting on this great conference. I hope you all have a great weekend. And now, it's on to our live question and answer time. Thanks for listening, everyone.